Does Kris Jenner actually love her family and her daughters? Let's talk about this, and her son, obviously, Rob. Let's talk about this, guys, because you guys would have seen this is Kris Jenner is the problem part 2, which I didn't know I was going to be doing a part 2 until hours after posting the video. I was like, I need to post another video, so here we are. But I want to talk about this because I spoke in the previous video, if you guys haven't seen it, you should check it out, about how there are a lot of women who capitalize off of their children, but they do it so well because they use their children for the sake of financial gain, but then because they're seen as these loving devoted mothers, that kind of shadows what they're doing. And I kind of illustrated the fact that I feel like we've all kind of just let the whole, Ray J Kim K thing just like go over our heads because we've been so distracted by the fact, like, but Kris loves her kids, but Kris loves her kids. And I've noticed that in a lot of scenarios in society, in the world, people will have like a toxic parent in their life, especially mothers who they keep who they keep in their life, or who they allow to keep abusing them, because they'll be like, oh, but she loves me, like she loves me but she does this, she loves me but she does that. And this is something that I think is unique for women, because like I said in the previous video, we have our feminine nature. It's easier for us to tap into being nurturing and so on and so forth. And when we tap into those areas of us, people feel safe around us, people feel like they want to trust us. And so that's why I think it's easier for women to get away with evil, because we can just hide it in all of that. And I kind of want to delve into that. And I want to talk about, does Kris really love her children? Because you see, the standard of love in the world for me is not the standard of love that is the real standard of love, which I will get to at the end, towards the end of this video, right? And I touched on in the previous video. But let's just look at the facts. Like, can you love somebody and at the same time do something that you know is going to hurt them? This is a question I have asked myself, I have asked God, I have asked, well, not maybe not asked people, but I've researched into, can you love somebody and still do things to hurt them? That is a question we have to ask ourselves, like, and knowingly, purposefully, because there's a difference between doing something to hurt somebody and you don't intend to, and it's like, wasn't your intention, it's an accident, whatever, like, that happens. We're humans, we're all different in relationships, we're all imperfect, blah, blah, blah. But I know, and I believe that Kris is one of those types of people who knows what she's doing. And I'm going to tell you guys why. I'll give you a couple of examples I can think of off of the top of my head of where I feel like Kris picked, money over the well-being of her children, knowing that their well-being was being affected. So, for example, you see, like, there was a scene on Keeping Up with the Kardashians where Kendall, well, there was a whole season actually towards the beginning. This is before Kendall and Kylie had all the work done they've had now. When they were younger and they were just starting to have their own career and Kim was taking off and stuff. And they were like saying to her, can we be homeschooled? Because they kept having this ongoing argument where they wanted to be homeschooled. But then she was like, well, you guys just need to do your, like, and they were saying, because they were struggling in school basically, because they were missing school because of the work stuff they were doing, right? Which is typical of people who work in, say, the entertainment industry and stuff like that. They miss, normal school, so they end up having to be homeschooled, or they school on the go and stuff like that. But she was kind of dismissing that and more just making them feel bad, saying they need to do their homework, they need to study. And they were saying to her, like, well, Mum, we're trying to, but we don't know what's happening. Like, I'm in class. Like, one of the parts I saw is Kylie was literally saying to her, like, I'm in class and I don't even know what they're talking about because I haven't been there. Can we just homeschool? Sorry, excuse me. So it's not like they're asking, like, can we just like not be in school? It's not like they don't care. They did care, but they were just struggling because they've been out of school. And again, as a teacher, somebody who's done teaching, I can appreciate that even missing just 2 lessons of school can really throw you off if, let's say, your teacher has a specific plan of all the different stages of what you're going to go through for the year. If you've missed like the basics, because you tend to do like the basic ideas in the start of the year, and then as the year progresses, you're like building on like the basics into the more and more difficult stuff throughout the year, right? So if they've missed some stuff in the year, then I can fully believe that this has knocked them off course completely. But it just seemed like Kris, to me, the way that Kris was responding, it was like she was doing this whole, thing of like, you guys just need to be hard workers, you need to work harder, you need to work harder, you need to work harder, which I felt like she did that more for the cameras than she did for her daughters, because for her daughters, they were literally saying like, and this wasn't the first time that, like, I've mentioned in the previous video, I mentioned other things about Kendall and Kylie and how, like, Kylie became like how they were going through all these things, you know, them even requesting that they could have their own manager because they're like, well, you're so busy managing Kim. Obviously Kim was the one who kicked off. Kim kicked off. Why? Because of the stage tape that her mum made her redo with Ray J, which is still something that blows my mind, right? So it's like this running theme of like when it suits her, you know, playing the mother who's like so upset and like crying. Like I saw some part on the show where she was like crying because she realized she probably wasn't going to be there by the time, you know, Stormy was 40 and whatever. She's crying, and I feel like it's those moments because you see what people say, especially when you like look at what people say online. People be like, oh, Kris cares so much for her daughters, and like I've seen so many manipulative parents out there in the world who know how to play that game so well, especially mothers who know how to play the like, oh my gosh, feel sorry for me, like this is so hard, blah blah blah, like this is what we're going through, like, you know, and then people feel like, oh no, this poor mother, like she's probably doing everything. And that's because the mothers who are watching, who actually are those types of mothers, are assuming that other mothers are like that. And that's why I think it's important to talk like about this stuff, not because I'm criticizing people's parenting, and because we've got to realize that some people are suffering in the world because we're not prepared to believe that not everybody is doing the right thing. I always say that my toxic trait personally is believing the best in people. I always want to assume the best. I want to assume that any mother truly loves her children. I want to assume any father truly loves his children. I want to assume that, you know, people in my life or in other people's life have have each other's best interests at heart. But the reality is, time and time again, it was proven that it's not. And time again, the most manipulative, deceptive people will use those characteristics against us in society. And we see this happening all the time. We saw this happening with Britney Spears, the same thing. People were like, oh, we feel so sorry for the parents are probably doing everything, blah blah blah. And it turns out in the end, Britney, there was nothing to really hold Britney against, other than the fact that if she was in this conservatorship, if she was seen the way that she was being seen in the media, then her family was able to make a lot of money from her. And while she was cooped up in lithium in her house, not able to go anywhere, not able to make decisions for herself, you know, and everything, and some of the time in a mental hospital as well for a long time, her family was out enjoying her money, staying in spending her money, staying in her properties. Do you see what I'm saying? And so now 15 years later, we're all like, oh no, we were wrong, like, oh, we should have known. But yeah, that's the point. And that's why I bring these things to the table, because when you first mention something, like all the things that we deal with and we see in the world, and they like the things that happen now, we're not going to really see the results of what's happening now tomorrow. We're going to see the results of what's happening now in 10 years. In 10 years is when, and then do you know when we're really going to see the results of what's happening now? In 50 years, right? And that's why you often find that there's like kind of every 50 years-ish kind of thing, there's always this like big shift of like, oh, we realized that this was what was happening over that 50-year period. And I feel like we're in this 50-year period that kind of started from like the 1970s till now, which is a lot of the time when a lot of this entertainment industry stuff and all this stuff became a thing in the way that it is now, where we're now seeing the results of decisions that right now that were made in the 1970s, which is what led the entertainment industry to be what it is now. So where are we going to be 50 years from now? Where are the generations, you know what I mean? So that's why it's important to talk about stuff, not to criticize people, not because I'm like a commentary or a tea or an exposed channel. I'm not about doing any of that. I'm like, let's actually be open-minded, and let's like be preemptive. You know what I mean? You know, like how they say prevention is better than cure. So let's actually be preventers, right? Let's actually do that. So back to what I was saying, I just had to add that in here, because I feel like sometimes people in the way that we are in society and the way that we think about things, you know, people don't really think in this way. We're very short-term thinkers, and that's actually the problem. But anyways, so when it comes to Kris, I don't know, I'm just like, girlfriend, like you're very good, like she's very good at making money, and her money has clearly been something that has been a driving force for her, even in her marriages, which I touched on in the previous video. You know, that money played a big role into, you know, her infidelity, so on and so forth. And then now, you know, with her children, and I kind of feel like, as the world looks at her as just like a crazy momager, right? Because it's the momager, like, I have to do everything for my kids. Like, I feel like the easiest way to be deceptive as a woman or the boss level way to be deceptive as a woman is to claim you're doing everything for your kids. Because when you say that, you sound like the most selfless person ever, and no one's going to question you. No one's going to say, oh, is that really true? Oh, whatever. And then the kids themselves are also now in a trap, because you feel like, let's say you're Kendall, let's say you're Kendall, Kylie, Courtney, Chloe, Kim, all of them. Let's say Rob even. Let's say you're those guys, although I think Rob would probably be more likely to agree with what I'm saying right now, right? You might feel a sense of guilt and ungratefulness if you were to speak up against somebody like Kris Jenner, because you'd be like, well, this woman is the woman who, if not for her, I wouldn't have these millions, these billions, I wouldn't have this career, I wouldn't have this house, I wouldn't have this stuff. And that's another thing that I feel like parents who are problematic are used to they weaponize. I put food on your table, I put clothes on your back, I put a roof over your head. Like, these are phrases that a lot of us heard growing up. A lot of parents say them because I think they're just trying to illustrate, that they really care about their kids. But it also makes children feel like a burden, and it also makes children feel like if I try to critique anything or try to address anything, I'm going to come across as ungrateful now, because now I'm just trying to say, it's like I'm trying to discredit all of that, or say that what you did wasn't good enough. And that's the problem here. And that's why when it goes back to the question of does Kris love her children, the answer to that is I'm going to continue on that thought process. So the next thing I was thinking about is, I'm just going with you guys and all these thought processes that I'm having in this whole subject, right? The next thing that I started to think about with all of this was, let's entertain the idea that she does love her children and she somehow does this anyway. Then how is that possible? How is it possible for somebody to be like that? And this is where I want to introduce why that I talk about the spiritual world on this channel, guys. This is where I want to introduce this, because the spiritual world, which people don't really believe in nowadays, again, if you look back 100 years, people did very much believe in the spiritual world. And if you look outside the Western society, I want to be the one to tell you guys in Western society, listen, if you don't really believe in the spiritual world, we are isolated in that. Can I tell you that? We are isolated. Us in the Western world, we are the only ones who really don't believe that things are happening in the spiritual world. The rest of the world, to some extent, knows what's going on. A lot of the world. It's us in Western culture who don't believe in this. The rest of the world, it's normal to talk about this stuff. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about to them will be like, yeah, that's like baby level stuff. You know what I mean? So anyway, I think there's a spiritual element to a lot of this, because I think, right, imagine if you were Satan, right? And you wanted to use the most powerful weapon. Think about the Garden of Eden, right? And I keep referring back to this. What is the most powerful weapon that you could use in this world to cause destruction? A woman, right? Why is it a woman? Because again, the deception of femininity. We come across as nurturing, as loving, as sweet, as, not as strong, like, oh babe, can you help me reach the thing? Like, oh, right? Which is fine, and it is great when it's not being weaponized. But when it is being weaponized, is the greatest tool, because let's be honest right now, when things go down, circling back to all these different situations, it's way easier for men to be pinpointed and get in trouble for a lot of things than women. It is what it is, right? This is why the Johnny Depp case was so huge. And somebody even left a comment under one of my videos, which really, really, hit me so hard, that this is what this person went through. And they were saying how, their brother had been with a woman, like, an Amber Heard type situation. And because of just, the stigma of it all, and then just the way that generally women are believed more than men, so on and so forth, he had stayed in this situation for a super long time. And it only was because Johnny Depp came forward that he felt comfortable to speak about it. And I feel like this is so much more common than we actually realize. And it's true that we as women know that we can weaponize this stuff. We can weaponize stuff like, well, if I call the police right now and say that you were beating me up, like, it's probably I can probably make this believable, you know what I mean? And this, that, and the other. So that the reason why I'm suggesting that is, I think the thing about us as human beings that we've got to remember, as far as the spiritual world is concerned, we're just vessels to them. Like, we're vessels. And when I say we're just vessels, I don't mean just as in nothing other than a vessel, right? But as far as the kingdom of darkness is concerned, that's exactly what it is. It's like, how can we utilize you for mass destruction? How can I utilize mankind for mass destruction? And so I think, unless you have the protection from this type of thing, which I'll talk about in a minute, you can easily become a vessel for the kingdom of darkness. The kingdom of, like I always say, guys, you know, sin is just a contract with the kingdom of darkness. It's a way for the kingdom of darkness to have a hold in your life, right? And when I say sin, which the Hebrew meaning of that Hebrew word for that is chet, which means like missing the mark, right? Losing focus, this, that, and the other. So the enemy uses the fact that we miss the mark, we lose focus, we whatever, right? So in the case of Kris Jenner, you could look at it like this. She, in my opinion, lost focus of what it meant to be a mother, which is first and foremost bringing up her children. You know, the Bible says parents should teach your child in the way he should go. When he's older, he will not depart from it, right? And it's actually interesting now that I think about that, because you could look at that in two ways, and you could almost say that she fulfilled that in the wrong way, because I actually think she is the reason why someone like Kim Kardashian and all her daughters don't really see the issue with a lot of the things they do. And I actually think they don't get it when some of us are actually concerned for their health and stuff when it comes to things like plastic surgery. Because think about this, guys. I can tell you this as a teacher, right? As a teacher, there's something about parents allowing something that like always will override any other level of authority. Because like I've been in situations where like a student might be doing something they shouldn't be doing, they might repeatedly be doing it. And do you know what will happen is, if you involve the parent, right, there's one of two things will happen. If the parent says you need to stop doing that, then they'll stop doing that. If the parent doesn't tell them they need to stop doing that, then they don't feel they need to, because parent trumps teacher. Parent trumps all. Parents are the ones who brought us into this world, and whether you have a great relationship or you don't, whether you listen or you don't, your parents have the highest level probably of influence of anybody in your life. Whether you realize it or not. This is also why it's hard for people to break away from, you know, toxic parents and stuff, because it's like, but you just feel such a strong connection, you know. And that is another form of a soul tie, by the way. That is another, like, not like there's so many different kinds of soul ties. So that level of influence, you think, partner all these bits together that I'm saying. The part where, you know, where Kris is the one who's encouraging Kim to even do this tape. The part where Kris is the one who's you know, managing all of them, making the money. So then even if they feel certain ways, even if Kendall and Kylie felt they weren't heard at this time, or they might have some underlying childhood trauma issues they're not talking about, partnering that all with the fact that she is the one who's allowing this and pushing for this, you know. Because again, like, I'm always thinking, well, who's allowing all this work to be done? I don't even know how old Kylie was when she first started getting work done, you know, if she was even old enough. I mean, her mom, again, is the same one allowing her to, as an underage, to be in a relationship with Tyga. It's like, she's the one who's allowing this. So who in the world is going to make these women think that anything is wrong with it if their own mother is making them feel like it's okay? And that's why I feel like the power of the mother plays into the world so much, or the absence even of a mother. And the absence of a mother can be a mother who's in the home, could be just a mother that's absent, like emotionally, mentally, if you know what I mean, spiritually as well. And so that's why I'm saying, when Kris is missing the mark, right, she's losing focus of her role as a mother, which is to protect her daughters, help them to learn to value themselves, help them to create careers based on their actual value. Because think about this, guys, no matter how much work, and I believe the Kardashians are genuinely hardworking people. I do believe they are hardworking. But let's be honest, no matter how hardworking you might think the Kardashians are, they have never, and they probably will never get away from the fact that they gained all of this fame because of the tape with Ray J. I'm trying not to say the name in case, you know, YouTube has an issue with me using the word, you know, and makes it all like an adult thing. You guys know what I'm talking about. And yes, I do have a cream egg mug with my coffee in it. But anyway, so I'm like, this is like the perfect opportunity for the enemy. This is the perfect opportunity for the kingdom of darkness to use Kris Jenner as a vessel for mass destruction. Think about it, because it's a domino effect. It starts off with her own kids, right? Her own kids, they get into a form of, you know, bondage. They get into a form of like, well, we're not really going to be able to speak up, and we can't really say what we mean and feel how we feel because our mum is, you know, she's done so much for us. She's the one who's been here. Unfortunately, Rob Kardashian passed away. None of the men ever managed to stick around. To me, that's always, I'm not going to lie, as women, oh my gosh, I might have to do a part 3. I'm going to do a part 3 because I don't want to make this too long, and I really want you guys to watch these through and like really like think about what I'm saying. I really want you guys to think about what I'm saying, because I'm not saying this to be provocative. I'm not saying this to just have something to make a YouTube video about. I'm saying this because I've been thinking about this a lot, and I actually genuinely care. And the Kardashian family is one of the most powerful families in the world. And I'm very concerned for the women in the world. I'm very concerned for the men in the world and the influence that that family has had. And I'm also concerned for the family itself. You know, the family, the children that are coming from those women right now. And also, you know, the guys involved. Even, you know, is it Brody and who's the other one? I can't remember the other brother's name, the other Jenner brother's name. What's going on now with Caitlyn? There's so much that is actually directly affecting us. I mean, anyways, I'm going to continue in part 3. I'm going to talk about Kris Jenner's and just the men, and why there's no men around, and how I feel like, again, that goes back to the thing I was saying previously about her influence as a woman. But anyways, and why I think she's the mastermind person behind it all. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to hit the like button. Especially don't forget to check out part 3, which I'm going to upload straight after this one, straight with this one. If life's a game, then let's play to win. I'll see you guys in part 3. If not 3, let's not do a Lord Farquaad. In part 3. Without further ado, guys, God bless every single one of you, and I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.